You might have seen the Reserve Bank of Australia featured on the news with its official interest rate decision, or when it releases a new series of banknotes. But did you know that the RBA is also a custodian of a rich and unique archives, featuring Australia's economic, financial and social history spanning almost 200 years? We hold many millions of individual documents, artefacts, photographs, objects, artworks and other material, all housed in environmentally controlled facilities in the bank's head office building in Sydney. The RBA archives tell the fascinating story of who we are as a nation. This video series gives you a glimpse behind the scenes as we discover more about the amazing collection. In this video, we speak with the RBA Senior Archivist, Virginia Macdonald. Virginia, before we start exploring some of the stories behind some of the bank's most significant items, what is the scope of the archives?
So I think when people think of the Reserve Bank as Australia's central bank, they very much think of that organisation that was created in 1960. But in fact, our records very much reflect our lineage. They predate us as a central bank in that we actually can trace our origins to the original Commonwealth Bank that was established in 1911. And over time, that bank took on more central banking functions. And they also inherited the records of early colonial banks. And we're very fortunate to be in a position where we, as the successor to that institution, have now inherited all the archival records of the Commonwealth Bank and also those early banks. And I think today, as we showcase some of our really significant items, you'll be able to see that our scope and our history, our holdings very much reflect our whole history as the Reserve Bank.
So Virginia, what is our earliest record?
Well, our oldest record is a mortgage document from 1824. This is one of 7 documents we have for the same parcel of land, which is 100 acres in what would be today's inner west of Sydney. It's a document, transfer of land between John Austin and Thomas Wild. It was originally a grant to John Austin from Governor Macquarie. It's from a series of records of the Savings Bank of New South Wales, although it actually predates that bank, which was established in 1832. So being from 1824, it's actually come to that bank through another bank called Campbell's Bank, which was named after its director, Robert Campbell. And it's a very important document, not just for the bank, but obviously nationally, due to its age. It's in fantastic condition considering it is nearly 200 years old. It's printed on vellum, which was a very common parchment that was used at the time, and vellum is actually made from usually calf or goat skin. It was used usually for legal documents or documents of importance because of its strength and because of its longevity. And as you can see, it's still in great condition. The writing has faded, the inks have faded over time, but we're still able to read the details on it. The series of records that it comes from also feature other famous people in our history. So we also have the records of, for example, Ludwig Leichhardt and Conrad Martins amongst this group of records. So we feel very fortunate to have it.
I keep on being distracted by this engraved coin. What's the story behind it?
This is a very special item from our archives, and it relates to our first governor, Denison Miller, who was the governor of the Commonwealth Bank from 1912. And when the Commonwealth Bank opened for business in Melbourne on the 15th of July 1912, this coin was found 2 days before that date in the strong room of the building that the bank was moving into by one of the storemen. And he found it on the floor, and he offered it to his colleague who didn't want it. So he then decided, well, I think it'd be a lovely thing to give to the new governor of the bank. So he had it mounted, as you can see, and engraved with the date of the opening of the Commonwealth Bank. And he gave it to Denison Miller, and he wrote a lovely letter that accompanied it and said to him, with this coin, you will always have a shot in the locker, which is an idiom which means that, with this, you would always have some money in the bank. And so it's very special. It relates to our first governor directly, and it was actually one of the first gifts that was given to the bank. So a very special item in our archives.
Now, I know the bank's archives reflect Australia's history. I believe we have some unique and very important documents from World War I.
We do, yes. And probably one of the most significant and moving letters that we have in the archives is this letter. It was written by a staff member who went to Gallipoli in World War I. He actually commanded the 12th Battalion at Gallipoli and landed there on the 25th of April 1915. And his name was Ernest Hilmer Smith. He worked in the bank's Hobart branch as a superintendent, and he wrote this letter to our Governor Denison Miller on the 27th of June 1915. And in it he describes the battle, the difficulties, the smell of the battlefield. You feel like you're actually there. And so it's a wonderful item. It also shows, I think, that the bank and its staff were so connected. There was humour in the letter because he mentions that even a battlefield is more difficult to manage than the bank where he worked. So I think he shows humour, he shows humility and warmth in this letter. And I think it just shows the paternalistic and the very close relationship staff had with their first governor of the bank. And of course the bank, as a central bank and developing those central banking functions, that actually began in the First World War, because only 2 years after we were created, we were established in 1912, the First World War, broke out, and as part of Britain at the time, of course, we sent troops. A lot of bank staff went to the war, and so one of the things that the bank was called on to do at only 2 years of age was to actually establish facilities where military personnel could be paid, and that was in Australia and overseas, including on warships. And so this was really the development of us as a central bank and taking on that role for the government, as well as raising money for the war effort. So this really is a wonderful letter. To have come from Gallipoli, being written at Gallipoli, is incredibly significant, and as a national item and also as an international item of significance.
So we know that one of the bank's major role and functions is creating and distributing Australia's banknotes. What's the significance of the two you have here today?
Yes, well, these are actually experimental polymer banknotes from the 1970s and 80s. And after the first decimal banknotes were issued in 1966, very soon after, forgeries of the $10 banknote appeared. Obviously, while prosecutions were enacted and the notes were retrieved from the public, it obviously did compromise our banknotes and their security. And so not long after that, the Reserve Bank researched a new way of printing banknotes. And one of the things they came up with was this polymer technology. And as you can see, this note, which features birds and has the clear window, very similar to the notes today. And this note, which features the philosopher and Nobel Prize winner Albert Schweitzer, and also has the clear window. So these are very much experimental research notes, but they do document the development of polymer, which is an Australian technology. And of course, many banknotes around the world are now printed on polymer, including our own banknotes. So I think in that sense, they're very significant as documenting that whole process and through to today.
One of the famous Australians on our current series of banknotes, of course, is Mary Raby. And I understand that she is also featured in one of our oldest records.
She is, yes, in a ledger dated 1832, and she appears as a depositor. There's many other convicts and free settlers, the accounts of ships, and of others in these ledgers, but Mary Raby's name really stands out. As you mentioned, she features on our current $20 note, and so it's very special to have this record. As you know, Mary Raby arrived in the colony of New South Wales in 1792. She'd been transported for 7 years. After 2 years in the colony, she married Thomas Raby, and he had farms and shipping, trading on the Hawkesbury River in New South Wales. And not long after they married, he died, and so she took over those business interests and developed the business into a very prosperous and wealthy concern. She had warehouses in George Street, and she was trading all up and down the Hawkesbury River. And as a woman at that time, that was obviously a significant thing to do. So having her accounts in our records is something very special. It obviously connects us with the present day and the fact that she does feature on our current $20 note. And so I just think that's something very special, and obviously a function of the Reserve Bank as a central bank is the design and the issue of Australia's banknotes. So, you know, I think it also very much reflects that our collection isn't static. We're always adding to our collection. So obviously our collection does go back to the 1800s, but our current series of notes, samples of those and the designs for those also feature in the archives today.
So Virginia, out of all of these amazing archives, do you have a favourite?
I do actually. I think one of my favourite items is an item we call the Sianza elephant. Sianza stands for Southeast Asia, New Zealand and Australia. And the first Sianza course or conference was held in Sydney in 1957, and the Commonwealth Bank was the host of that conference, and so at the end of it all the delegates presented this solid bronze to the bank as a gift, and I think very symbolic, and I think that everyone there would have recognised the significance of this item. Sianza brought together other central bankers on an annual basis so that they could discuss, they could learn, they could make networks, liaise with each other, and bankers in our region here in the Asia Pacific region. Before, we had very much looked to the UK and Europe as our strategic partners, and so I think it really showed the far-sightedness of the governor of the time, Dr. Coombs, that he realised our future was really in this region and in Asia. And so I think that is also very symbolic and significant, and that this gift represents that very much as well.
If you'd like to explore the archives further, why not visit the online archives at unreserved.rba.gov.au or the RBA Museum website at museum.rba.gov.au.